Danny Segura for MMAJunkie.com here with one of the greatest coaches today. I would say actually the fittest coach in MMA today, Mike Brown. Mike, how are you?
Good, man. I'm doing good. Staying busy.
It seems that coach belly comes in at 50. What's the deal with that?
The what? What's that?
The coach belly comes in at 50. What's the rule for
Oh
that?
man, no, I'm fighting that, man. I'm fighting. I don't get chubby, but my conditioning is terrible. You just can't tell how bad of shape I am in. Like I get tired really quick, but I just don't look it.
All right, man. So let's talk about fighting. But before we do, first of all, how are you coping in this whole pandemic? You're down at Coconut Creek, Florida. How is life for you right now?
It's good, man. It's got slow, man. Things have slowed down, but um, we still have a few guys in there always training because the as far as we know, the UFC was going to have a show. Uh, it was like it was 4 weeks away, so everybody was getting ready, and then it got postponed. But then it was another 4 weeks away, so we always had a few people in there that needed to get ready. So we're still training, but it's just a very small group.
Yeah. So people know what fighters are in there gearing up for fights and which ones are you helping directly? I know I believe Hardy has a fight, Greg Hardy, Jairzinho Rosenstruck, and Olinik. Am I missing anybody?
Yeah, we got Charles Rosa,
No, that's right.
um, Andrei Arlovsky,
Hmm.
Christoph Jotko, and I think there's a few more. But those are the three that I've been working with for this next few weeks. But yeah, the big one is like Yerzinho. That's a very big fight.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few big ones, and I mean they're going to bang them out, right? We've had a bunch of time with no fights, so there's a lot of guys that need some work, need to get paid, so they're
Yeah.
going to bang a bunch of fights out, and we'll have some entertainment for the next few weeks, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's like three cards in just like a few days, so that's gonna be certainly a lot of fist fighting for all the good fights we've missed out on the last couple months.
Yeah.
Um, And as a coach, how has this pandemic presented problems? Like, how are you running operations, and how difficult is it to get a fighter, ready for a world class fight within these conditions?
Yeah, I mean it's tougher. I mean, obviously it's not ideal. There's a lot less people, a lot less training partners, but we have so many athletes down here that we make do. And scheduling is tougher. And instead of having everybody meet at one time, now we have to come in a lot more often and spread the people out. So there's only a couple of fighters in the gym at a time. But we're still getting solid training in. I would think that they're in shape, they're prepared. I mean, it's not ideal. They're not getting what they're usually getting. They're not getting as many. The biggest thing we're missing is variety. Usually
Hmm.
you get a good variety of partners, which I think is important. But now we're sticking to one training partner, two training partners maximum, and you can you can still get to where you need to go, but it's and it's not ideal, not perfect, and but they're all in shape and ready to go.
Yeah. Is there certain things you prioritize under these times that you otherwise wouldn't with a regular camp, or things that you have to worry about now that you normally wouldn't?
Uh, I mean, the gym is empty because there's no general students,
Yeah.
so you don't have that. There's a lot less cluttered, a lot of less distraction. You can kind of focus on who's got a fight because the only people in the gym are those who
Right.
have a fight coming up in the next month or two. Um, and we got a big gym, and there's usually a lot of people there.
Yeah.
So right now it's never been so quiet, never been so dead. So in some ways that's nice. It's good,
Yeah.
it's more focused for those people that are fighting. They're getting more attention um, from the coaches. More, it's all laser focused on them. There's not
Yeah.
as many distractions and not as many other things going on. And as of now, it was like only the UFC is going to have fights. It sounds like other things are going to start opening up, but it was like there's only a few people really training for fights at this time.
Right. Yeah, it must be weird being at ATT. For those that don't know, at American Top Team in Coconut Creek. The facility is huge. I mean, I don't know how many stories high it is, but like you walk in and like the ceiling's like way up there. Must be weird without having, all that many people in there.
Yeah, I think it's 40,000 square feet, something
Yeah.
like that. I mean, it's a big facility, but there's also people living there. We have dorms, so there are
Yeah.
people that live there full time. So that's another kind of strange twist where uh, even when where things are really getting locked down and people aren't training, but you still have literally people living at the gym. That's their home. you know.
Yeah.
So it makes for a strange time.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. And what fighters are you going to UFC 249, or like are you coaching any fighters on that card specifically?
to me, all the numbers are blending into each other. Which date is that?
That's the May 9th. That's the very first one with
Yeah,
Tony
Charles
and
Rosa. I'll be there. I think he's the first fight of the night. I'll be with him.
with who? I'm sorry.
Charles Rosa.
Okay, yeah, Charles Rosa.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
might be the first fight of the night.
Yeah, he'll be opening things up.
Yeah,
Um, and
Bryce
I'm
Mitchell,
guessing
I
you guys are
believe.
going by car, right, to Jacksonville, or are you guys flying
Yeah,
out?
driving up. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's 4 hour drive. Not so bad. Maybe even less. I mean, better than flying. By the time you go to the airport, wait for your flight, this and that. I mean,
yeah.
it's about the same time to get there.
I would also assume it's, you must feel much safer taking a car knowing that, you're less exposed to other people at the
Yeah,
airport
yeah,
and
a
just,
lot less people
yeah,
that you got to deal with it, cross paths with. The much safer route, I believe. I don't even know how many flights are being flown right now. I don't know how busy the airports are. I couldn't imagine even what it looks like.
yeah. I've heard it's actually kind of slowed down a lot, so it's a bit of a ghost town, but there's still people getting around and going places. Like the airlines are still operational.
Yeah.
Um, and as far as the card itself, I mean, you're experienced not only as a fighter but as a coach for several years now. How is this like? Are you kind of intrigued on how this whole thing's gonna look? Because I mean, it's the first, right? First time we held fights during a global pandemic. So, what do you expect from the card and just fight week in general?
Yeah, it's going to be definitely a different vibe, like without a crowd is much different. Um, I think some people will maybe fight differently. Some it'll be good for, some it won't be. Maybe some people feed off the crowd, some people compete better with the audience. Maybe an audience bothers some people. We might see some slightly different fights out of this. It's probably maybe there's an advantage to some of the guys who may have fought an Ultimate Fighter
Yeah,
show or been on Contender. These places with no crowds. Um, People that have that experience already, it might be a slight advantage for them. Um, these are all like little factors that all weigh in.
yeah,
We They did have the one UFC right in Brazil
right.
without a crowd. That they
Brasilia.
did
Yep.
that one time recently. I wasn't there, so I don't know how it felt,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it was quite different.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I talked to Enrique Arzola, a former ATT guy, and he was telling me that he's like, "Yo, it felt like the Ultimate Fighter. Like that's exactly what it felt like." Obviously, there's some people there, but the experience was very much the same. And talked to Juan Espino, an ATT guy currently in Spain. He was
Yeah.
telling me that he feels like the tough guys will have an advantage because they know what's up and they know how to fight without a crowd. And talked to Durinho Burns recently, and he was like, "Yeah, definitely felt different. Like the adrenaline never kicked in, which usually the crowd
Hmm.
helps for
Yeah.
that. So definitely going to be an interesting dynamic there."
Can be good and bad.
Yeah,
The adrenaline. Also, you have being able to hear your coaches clearly is
that's right.
different. Uh, and I mean, who knows if this is all good or bad things for each fighter, but it's just definitely a different experience.
Yeah, you'll have your voice by the end of the night.
Yeah, right. It'll be interesting. I mean, similar also fighting in Japan. Small shows in Japan are very quiet, and you can hear all the instructions. You can hear every punch, every grunt, every groan. Um, it's it's definitely a different experience, and we'll see. I think some people it's good for.
Yeah, for sure. Would you also say like this time benefits strikers more? Because I mean, you can get in pad work. You can hit the bag. You can do certain things with striking in within these times without partners, right? With the whole social distancing, whereas jujitsu, if you need a partner to roll, you need a partner to get in, that technique in.
Yeah, I think I didn't really think about that, but yeah, I think there's some truth to that where it's for wrestling and grappling. I think it's much more important to have a variety of partners in different styles and different looks. The live grappling, the live sparring is really important for 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 jujitsu and wrestling, but it's not as important for the strike. Of course,
Right.
sparring is important, but I think you can get, you're right, pretty sharp with drills and things like this. You're not always going 100%, but with wrestling and jiu-jitsu, you're going live quite a bit with a variety of guys. Yeah, I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Curious to see how the fights look. Well, I have some questions about some of the fighters that you coached fairly recent. Actually, the most normal event we had before this whole pandemic thing, UFC 248, right? Joanna Jedrzejczyk competed there, as well as Yoel Romero, which I believe it was the first time you worked with him, right? For a
Yeah,
fight, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So as far as the Joanna fight, I think I think anybody can agree that's like one of the best fights ever. That's up there with the Lawler Rory McDonald fights. Just a fantastic fight overall. Did you expect that type of fight going in there, getting ready for champion Zhang Weili?
I mean, I knew it was going to be good. I knew it was. I knew that she's very tough. I figured it'd be belt to belt fighting, but and I didn't. I mean, I didn't even appreciate to how good it was when it was happening, because you're just kind of reacting.
Yeah.
Everything that happens, uh, you're just trying to figure out what's next. What do we got to do in the next minute, next round, next combination to get the advantage, or to take this fight over. You're not really appreciating how good it is. Um, but I knew it was a close fight. I knew it was an exciting fight, but I didn't know to truly what extent until I rewatched it. When I
Yeah.
rewatched it, it was very high paced, um, a lot of heart, everything you would want in one of those fight of the year candidates. A little bit of drama, you know, tooth and nail all the way, a lot of action, and some back and forth, some ups and downs. Where and when it came, I think in the third round, I really thought Joanna was pulling away. It looked like Weili was slowing down, and but then the fourth, she came back strong and seemed like she got her wind back. It was a pretty awesome fight.
Yeah, I was at the media room for there in Vegas, and for the first time, when it's a good fight, usually like for media, it's like when it takes you out of your media role, like you're usually working and looking
Yeah,
at the fight and going back and forth. But for the first time, like whenever those fights go down, which is not very often, everybody kind of just stops working and everyone's just glued to the TV. So definitely, I think a historic fight, in my opinion. The best female fight ever, and I think regardless of gender, it's one of the best fights ever.
yeah. There
Um,
was even a weird time with like the swelling. Like
yeah.
at one point, I wasn't even, because the way she was swelling, it was kind of even along the forehead.
Hmm.
Like I wasn't even sure that she was swelling for a second. I was like, she just looked different. Like you almost couldn't even tell what was going
Yeah.
on. I'm like, are my eyes playing tricks on me? She looks different than normal. Is it me? Like I couldn't really tell. And then as it kept getting bigger, you're like, oh, damn, no, her whole forehead is swelling.
Yeah.
Um, it was really strange. I think she has a tendency to swell. It's happened in the past.
Yeah.
Um, and, as good on her part, she does well of keeping her chin tucked and using, she's going to get hit. She's hit with her forehead.
Hmm.
But on the bad side of that, it was a lot of swelling
Yeah.
and didn't look good.
Yeah, we've seen it before, like on a specific part of her forehead, but this was the first time it got that big, and also just her overall forehead.
And
I
it was
guess what was
symmetrical. It wasn't like on one spot. It was
right.
like the symmetry of it made it look so strange.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this was on one spot. It looked like symmetrical, so it almost looked like the shape of her head. It was very strange.
Did you at any point thought about throwing in the towel? I mean, she was obviously competitive all throughout the fight. It was very close. A lot of people scored for her. But like you said, I mean, the swelling was definitely something we've never seen in any fight, really.
No, because I mean that was at the very end. That was like,
Yeah.
I think maybe, I mean I don't remember exactly. My memory's not that sharp, but I mean if I remember in like might have been like the fourth round, I was starting to wonder like what's going on. Maybe I saw something was off, but it wasn't until the fifth when you really saw like, oh no, this is her forehead.
Yeah.
Her forehead swelling badly. I mean at this point it was near the end and it was razor close and you didn't know whose fight it was, and it was only swelling, and that's all it was. It wasn't,
Yeah.
she didn't seem hurt. She looked strong. Her her heart and mind were in it.
Yeah. And I don't want to sort of put you in an angle where like you're making up excuses for someone or anything like that, but it was clear that it was bothering her. Like she kept touching it throughout the fight. How much do you think that played a factor in the actual fight?
I don't think it played a factor in her at all. Like I think, I mean, maybe it could have a little bit, but man, she's mentally tough as hell, as
Yeah.
mentally as tough as anybody can be. If there's a problem, her mind is her maybe her best asset. Uh, so that wasn't a big deal, but that does play a factor in the judge's decisions
That's right. Yeah.
for big,
Damage.
big time. Like if she didn't swell like that, I think she would have got the nod for sure.
Mm,
I mean the slightest little thing. I mean it was a split decision.
close.
One judge giving her one more round is the difference between winning and losing that fight. So anything different, she gets her hand raised and we're in a totally different spot, right? This one punch different,
Yeah.
one punch that snaps her head back at one moment of time is enough to have one judge go, maybe I'll lean to Joanna on this one.
Yeah.
So the smallest thing, and I think for sure, had she not swelled like that, then we wouldn't even be having this conversation. I thought she won that fifth round, and it really came to that. One judge gave her, two didn't. Especially like at the very end when she finished strong with that spinning back fist and wobbled her. It was like the perfect kind of ending. But I think the swelling didn't look good in the judge's eyes.
Yeah.
And this is part of the fight. This is it's
Certainly. Yeah.
but it wasn't. I would say it wasn't easy to score that fight.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah, it was tough. As soon as it was over, I just remember, again, it was one of those fights. It was so good that it was one of those fights that kind of take you out of, because as media, you're kind of always scoring the rounds and trying to do
Yeah.
that job. And it kind of takes you out of that hat and puts you in the fan fight. And you're just enjoying the fight. Like, you're just like, wait, what? We're in round 5? Like, I don't even know who won what.
Right.
But, I knew it was going to be 48-47 either way. That's how close it was.
Yeah.
Safe to say the most intense experience as a coach for a fight?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was up there. Yeah. And for me, anytime the round is close, I put it in a category of I don't know, and that because the judges can go either way, even if you believe solidly one way, like no, I really believe we won that round, or I believe we lost that round. Even if you think that, you got to realize when it's close enough that the judges probably won't be in agreement on it. And most of those rounds were in that category for me. Even if I had thought she had won the rounds, the only round I was sure about was round 3.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most clear-cut round I thought in the whole fight, and that was and come to find out, it was kind of how the judges scored it. All 3 judges gave Joanna the third. Every other round was a mixed round. That none of the judges agreed upon any round except for the third, which all 3 gave to Joanna. So it wasn't easy to score.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. And look, she's expressed interest. I recently talked to her a few weeks ago. She's expressed interest in an immediate rematch. Obviously, it's a fight that we already know that deliver. And right now, at this time at strawweight, there's no clear number 1 contender. Maybe you can obviously. I think Tatiana Suarez is right there, but I think she's having neck problems, and that still hasn't gotten resolved. So there's no real number 1 contender. Would you like, as a coach, an immediate rematch?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what she wants. That's what she has put herself in position for. I think she's the best fighter there. Um, I mean, sometimes people. I mean, I'm blown away. People, uh, you know, sometimes criticize her or us or whatever. Like, obviously, these are the two best in the weight class, and I mean, it was razor tight. I mean,
Yeah.
this was like these are two of the best athletes in the world, and it was like neck and neck down to the last second, literally. And this tiniest of margin would have changed that fight. Uh, and Weili's an incredible fighter,
Yeah.
maybe the most power we've seen at that weight class, in the history of the sport. She hits really hard for that weight. We've never seen that before. Very powerful athlete. Um, Good mix of striking technique and grappling technique. You know, uh, she's a special athlete, and so was Joanna. It was a
Yeah.
great contrast in styles, uh, and it was entertaining as hell.
Yeah, and not to give too much away here, but let's say the UFC does go with the immediate rematch route. Going towards that second one, how would you change things differently, or what do you think needs to be added to sort of get over that? Perhaps be on the right side of that split decision, or get a more convincing decision win.
I mean, there's a lot of things we can do. Of course, we don't want to give away too much,
Hmm.
but um, we could be we. I mean, I think that we were a little concerned with the upper body strength of Weili going into the fight. But Joanna was fine in the clinch. She was plenty strong, and I think more technical, and I think that she could handle herself in those situations. I think she could handle the wrestling in that fight. I think she could put the pressure on heavier inside. But that's where a place we were concerned going in because from some of the film we had watched. But Joanna is very strong in there. She's good in the clinch. She's good uh, technically, and that stuff also wears you down. Getting into wrestling and grappling exchanges uh, saps the gas tank of most athletes. But I think Joanna has the best conditioning in the weight class and some of the best gas tank in the sport. Right, her conditioning is as good as it gets. Um, so that's some of the things we could change. But when you're in the fight, it's not easy because it's like it's so close. We're right there. You
Right.
want to make changes, but you don't want to make drastic changes either because you know you don't know what the score, how they're being scored. You know it's close. You're trying to make small adjustments to try to pull away. But if you make a too large of an adjustment, maybe you're throwing it out the window.
Right.
You know what you're doing is working mostly, but not completely. It's uh, it's much easier to say after the fact, right? Hindsight is always 2020.
Right.
So, um, but now the fight's over. For sure, there's many things we could change, and we could approach it differently. And I think there's some things we could do that we didn't in the first.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if the UFC decides to go with an immediate rematch. If they do, I don't think many fans would complain given the nature of that first bout. But now let's talk about the main event of that card. You were in Romero's camp. It was the first camp that you worked with him. Um, a lot of people kind of were left wondering what happened there. It was an interesting fight. There was very little action. Was that the strategy? Like, what was the game plan going into it?
I mean, it was a little bit strange. I wasn't his head coach,
Hmm.
and I was helping him out the best I could. And honestly, I don't know everything that's said all the time. I don't speak Spanish, so
Yeah.
his head coach speaks only Spanish and speaks pretty much no English. So the communication is tough. You know, um, I did my best to in the camp to work on some drills and some strategy and some ideas that we can implement to try to help us out and mix things together. I was kind of brought in more to help with the the overall MMA and kind of mixing things together.
Mhm.
Of course, I would have liked to seen a bit more of that. But I see both sides, man. I see both guys are so dangerous at what they do. I can see why it's a slow paced fight. And um, Adesanya is keeping distance. He's got a great length advantage, a lot of reach advantage. He is the best striker in the weight class. One of the best strikers in the sport. Um, Against a guy who's a lifetime wrestler. Not easy to close that distance and put yourself out there to attack this guy, right?
Mhm.
Especially if he's being defensive. And then I can see Adesanya too. You got Romero, who is probably the best pure athlete in the sport. Crazy explosive, crazy powerful, can do so much damage in a short time, short explosive movement, and you don't know what he's coming with. So I can see why both guys are cautious.
Yeah.
When people are saying, oh, you got to get in there, you got to do this, do that. Man, you do that, man. It's
Right. You try to
you're
close the distance with Adesanya.
yeah against this guy. I
Yeah.
mean, both guys are so dangerous, right? In a weird way, like I mean, I was coaching it, but in a weird way, I was enjoying some of these things that were going on in that fight. I know it was slow, and of course, it
Mm.
could have had more action. But just the strangeness of the whole thing when Yoel is like switching his feet back and forth like a statue, and his feet are moving back and forth, kind of like
Yeah.
seeing how Adesanya is going to react. And Adesanya doesn't dare to attack. I mean, this guy is like, a lifelong striker, world champion kickboxer, and he's like afraid to commit against this guy, who's been striking for, 5 years or whatever it's been. Um, it's to me, it's interesting, Of
Yeah.
course, that it was too slow. We needed more action and this and that. But I would have liked to seen, um, some more takedown attempts, some a little more pressure, try to mix things up better. Even it's going to help the scoring. I mean, these rounds were close. Like
Yeah.
a takedown, even if you don't even hold them down very long, there's enough in those rounds to win any round. I mean, nobody got hurt, right? So if
Right.
guys aren't getting hurt, any small improvement could sway the judges in any round. And getting that takedown or attempting those takedowns would also open up the striking. So things that could have been done and maybe should have been done, but not so easy to do when you have that guy in front of you.
Yeah. Now, something I want to ask you. I know you weren't the head coach, but you still got to witness Romero train and sort of see what he's got in the training room. A lot of people, including Dana White, were saying, "Okay, well, this is it. Like, this was his last title shot. This and that." And we know he's his age. He's fairly old for an MMA fighter, but at the same time, you look at the dude, you go, Jesus Christ, this guy's definitely not in his 40s. Do you think people are kind of discounting the idea that Romero could very well stick around for a long time and build back to a title shot?
He's the greatest athlete I've ever seen.
Even within his 40s.
At this age, yeah, no, I mean, what he can do with his body's incredible. Like I've never seen anything like it. Like speed, reaction time, agility. I mean, he's in his 40s and his reaction time is incredible. His speed's incredible. His coordination is incredible. Like this is the more I see from guys like him, the more I realize what a terrible athlete I am. Like the I couldn't imagine what he was like when he was 30, or
Yeah.
25. I mean, it must have been unbelievable. I know he's a world champion in wrestling, and I mean, this is so difficult. This is not, wrestling is so deep, and
Yeah.
so many people are competing for the same title. It's very competitive, but he got a really late start in the sport of MMA,
That's true.
and he's done some amazing things. And dude, I mean, you do got to worry about, time catches up with everybody, but right now, how he looks in the gym and what he can do, I mean, I definitely see him getting back to the title.
Yeah. And yeah, do you believe, I guess, when he says he's gonna fight for 10 more years?
I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, I can't believe he looks like he does right now. I mean, who knows when things are going to change? That's always the question mark. But right now, he can beat anybody in the world. You know, on any given night, he's as good as anybody. Obviously, right? He was
Yeah,
right there that night. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
even
And yeah, go ahead.
that night when the scorecards came down, even though the fight, you know, wasn't a good fight. It was, you
Hmm.
know, it was boring. It was, people didn't like it. Uh, but in my head, I thought he had done enough in those rounds to win.
Hmm.
Like, um, it was, I didn't like watching it live. The leg kicks didn't feel like enough to me. It felt like Adesanya was, you know, on the run more, or maybe in danger of being finished more. Where, I mean, you can't always see the angles if the punches are landing or not. But
Right.
when Yoel would attack and Adesanya was like stumbling around, you know, maybe the punches were missing, and maybe, but it's hard to tell sometimes, you know.
Hmm.
Uh, but from the outside, I thought he had won. I didn't, but I knew they were close enough again where I didn't know how the
Right.
judges scored it. But if it was I was scoring it, I would say he had won 3 of those rounds. But I knew again they were close enough where you couldn't argue either way.
Right.
Um, but you know, there was one round was like there's like only one shot landed. You know, it was like Yoel threw one overhand and cracked him. You know,
Yeah,
and
first
it's
round,
like,
right?
dude, it was
Yeah.
literally one punch the whole round. Very weird fight to score,
Yeah.
but I had scored it for Yoel.
Yeah, extremely difficult. It was literally like
Another
the
one,
same
not easy.
scenario of the co-main event, but just I guess the volume turned down a little bit.
Yeah, and fighting subjective. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
it's different people's opinions. You know, um, I mean, damage is a big part of it. Um, like trying to finish the fight is a part of it. Control is a part of it. You know, what do you prefer? You know, what
Right.
is, you know,
Yeah.
what is your eye like? You know.
And lastly, on him, after the fight, there was a lot of criticism on that fight, but it seemed it was all centered around Joel, and we know it takes two to tango. Do you feel like the criticism was a bit unfair?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are acting like, oh, when you're the challenger, you have to do this, you have to do that. I mean, you're just in the fight, you know. I think you're reacting to the moment to moment action as it comes to you. You know, you're not thinking about, I'm the challenger, I got to get him. You're just, you know, trying to solve the puzzle that's in front of you. And um, yeah, I've never liked that mentality. You know, you got to score the round. You can't say, if you got to beat the champion convincingly. No, you got to beat him. That's it. You know, especially these world class athletes.
Right.
It's not easy to hurt these guys, finish these guys. Okay, I'll say, if you literally think that it's a draw, I can see, and you have to choose somebody. Okay, you can lean towards the champion. But if the challenger has the edge, then he's got the edge, and he won the round.
Yeah. And one last thing, what's the latest on everyone's favorite fighter nowadays, Street Jesus? What's going on with Masvidal? Is he in the gym? What's the latest on him? We heard rumors that he was going to fight potentially on short notice against Kamaru Usman. That was kind of discussed on Twitter between them. But what's the latest on that? I guess in
I
him.
I think they're coming close. I think they're talking a lot about the, I think, financial, how they're going to deal with it. But I think they're coming really close to terms on the fight. I think it's close to being done. I'm not sure of the date, but I know they're working on it. I know it's close, and uh, I'm sure we'll see it sometime soon.
Yeah.
I
Is
don't
it
know the date
Mhm.
and exactly what everybody's going to make out of it, but I'm sure it'll happen.
This summer? Maybe you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it'll be next, and I don't know when they will, the UFC will want to, you know, what show they'll want to put it on. The
Mhm.
things are all backed up. I mean, the scheduling's a mess right now, but I think that'll be the next fight for George.
Yeah. Is it close enough where I guess you're already starting to break down Usman and sort of look at that challenge from a coaching standpoint?
Absolutely, yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely.
Interesting.
Getting
And
there.
yeah. And what do you think are some of the key issues that or key problems that you're gonna have to sort of tackle when facing someone like Usman?
Yeah, I mean, the more I watch, he's good pressure wrestler, um, good conditioning. Uh, he's going to come forward. He fights both stances. He's going to push you against the cage. He's good at his cage wrestling is very good. He's looking to put you on the wall, take you down, and grind you out. That's what he does. I mean, with rare exceptions. If he's fighting a guy like a Colby or a Damian Maya, he has chose to stand and kickboxer those two athletes. But those are the only two guys that he's ever really stood with. Um, the rest have been, him looking to pressure and get you to the floor at all costs. And I'm assuming that's what he'll be like with George.
Yeah. Do you think people are sleeping on George because obviously George has blown up as a star, and once certainly people blow up and kind of start getting close to that Conor McGregor atmosphere, it seems a lot of people kind of just say, "Oh, it's the hype, it's the hype." But I mean, you've been around for a long time as far as MMA is concerned, and you're one of the best coaches out there. Do you think people are sleeping on his technique and are too focused on sort of the 3-piece and the soda and all the hype?
I mean, there may be some people that are like that, but I don't think the people in the business are like that.
Mm-hmm.
The people that are in the business don't think that at all. I mean, this guy has more experience than anybody. This guy is not somebody who is, just had a lucky fight or two. This guy is a more than 50 fight veteran,
Yeah.
who knows more technique than anybody in the game. He has more weapons than anybody. A guy who's got great boxing, great Muay Thai skills. He's got techniques from Taekwondo. He's got good wrestling, jiu-jitsu. This guy has more techniques than anybody I've met and can apply them. If you have a hole in your game, he will expose it because he can come with. If you have a weakness to a certain type of style or technique, he has that capability of using that. Or if you don't like to be kicked, well, he can kick. If boxing gives you a problem, he can box all day long. If you're a striker, he can wrestle. He can do it all.
Yeah, certainly. It's funny because he's often associated with, street fighting and all that, but you've said it before, you think he's got some of the highest fight IQ in the game, which usually that doesn't, associate with street fighting. I think, that's just a very interesting point you make.
He's just a lifelong student of fighting. He was doing it before, MMA was around, before, before it was even thought of. It's something that's in him, that's in his blood, and what he's always done. It's his passion, and he started doing it at a very young age, which is also a big advantage. The earlier you start, the more it's ingrained in your. Yeah, it's just part of him.